This week, Anthropic and Figma launched a new Claude code integration that transforms how products are designed. Could this mark the end of traditional design as we know it, and are designers being relegated to little more than taste executioners? We'll take a look at how it works with some insights and perspectives from Figma CEO, Linear's product manager, and more. Plus, why a code red at Pinterest has led to a bitter struggle between their CEO and product teams over the direction of their AI assistant. Cursor gets some new plugins, and new data from Ramp reveals which models are leading the pack in the first few months of 2026. So stay tuned for all of that and more. And as always, if you do enjoy the briefing, then hit the subscribe and the like button. So we'll start with a story that everyone seems to be talking about in tech this week, and that is that Anthropic and Figma have launched a new Claude Code to Figma MCP integration. With these new integrations, users can now send the rendered state of a design from Claude Code straight into Figma as fully editable layers by installing the Figma MCP and simply typing "send this to Figma." Once the design is in Figma, designers can then use the canvas to explore different visual options, compare them side by side, and refine details with direct manipulation. Once you're happy with your design changes, these can then be pushed back into Claude Code for more functional manipulation. As part of the release, Figma's CEO published a piece over on X where he explained that the traditional product to design workflow is changing. Instead of the traditional brainstorm, design, code sequence, he says that modern workflows can now start anywhere. So this could be in the terminal, through a prompt, in the UI, Sketch, and then go everywhere. He echoed this sentiment further on the company's earnings call this week, where he said that we're seeing roles and responsibilities blur across design, engineering, and product management. Figma Make, he says, is expanding use cases, bringing in diverse personas like product managers, and encouraging a more generalist approach within teams. Some designers have fully embraced this shift towards Claude Code and refused to go back. So in this example, you can see how one designer at Tailwind designed and built a dashboard, saying that he doesn't think he can ever go back to the old days of designing static designs in Figma and then translating those into code. Figma's CEO says that because of this blurring of the boundaries between traditional roles in a product team, the ultimate skill is now about deciding what to build. He says that in a world where AI can help build any possibility you can articulate, your core work is to find the best possible solutions in a nearly infinite possibility space. In other words, it is taste that is quickly becoming the critical factor in product development. OpenAI's co-founder Greg Brockman agrees and tweeted this week that taste is a new core skill. And some of the replies then chipped in with some advice on what people with taste look like in tech, which was actually quite amusing. Google's senior product manager also agrees, saying that taste is now one of only 6 skills that he says that matters in 2026. He posted this article on X outlining what he believes are the skills that matters, and taste is one of them. In his view, taste means knowing what to build before it exists, knowing what good looks like when you're staring at 10 options and 9 of them are wrong. This article is worth a read as he covers not just taste, but also some other essential skills like agent orchestration, context, and problem solving. So I'll pop the link to that in the description for you to have a read. But on the other hand, Linear's product manager isn't convinced that humans actually possess more taste than AI models. He says, "I hate to break this to everyone, but you probably don't have better taste than the AI. If you ask any leading model about a product decision with some guidance, it will give you a better answer than 90% of PMs. A lot of people are afraid to do this because they suspect that the answers will actually be very good. There are plenty of other distinctly human things that we can contribute, but having better taste, in his view, isn't one of them." So for people without a strong sense of taste, AI models are offering a shortcut, with plenty of examples of models creating UI that genuinely look better than what some humans may create. This is all contributing to tension between product team members, which Mark Anderson has described as a Mexican standoff, where product managers, designers, and engineering roles increasingly overlap as AI lets each role do more of the other's work, shifting the bottleneck from execution to coordination and decision-making. This blurring of the lines between disciplines is also causing some other CEOs to become more involved in engineering. So this week it was revealed that Shopify's CEO is now shipping more code than ever. His GitHub profile shows that the number of commits has increased 10x from 94 in 2024 to 957 so far this year. Now, commit numbers don't necessarily mean much, but what's interesting here is the kinds of projects that Shopify's CEO is contributing to. So he's contributing to projects like Liquid's language evaluation, which reworks Shopify's open source Liquid engine for better performance, Ruby developer tools, and personal experiments such as config tools. Liquid is Shopify's templating backbone, which means that every shop's theme, every merchant's customization runs through it. So, in a sense, after mandating his entire company to use AI, he's using his own behavior to prototype and validate the cultural transformation that he's previously demanded of his own employees. But back to Figma, and while the company has had a rough ride lately with their stock price plummeting, their most recent earnings call paints a pretty positive picture. It showed that net dollar retention rates have actually increased significantly up to 136%, and weekly active users of Figma Make has grown a significant 70%. So does this all point to the end of traditional design as we know it? The workflow that started with brainstorming, moved to design, and ended with code is no longer a straight line. It is now a loop, so it's more flexible, fluid, and increasingly AI-powered. And at the center of that loop isn't necessarily a tool, it's a person with taste. So in other words, someone who knows what good looks like. But what do you think? Is taste the ultimate driver of good product design? And is this the end of traditional design as we know it? And if you're a designer or somebody who dabbles with design, do you think you have better taste than the top models? Let me know in the comments below. Elsewhere this week, Airbnb is testing out a new AI-powered search feature according to their latest earnings letter. In this letter, they say that they are applying AI to how people discover and plan trips on Airbnb and taking an iterative approach. Early tests focus on letting guests describe in natural language what they want and ask questions about both the listing and the surrounding location, instead of just clicking through filters and photos. Over time, they expect this to evolve into a more comprehensive and intuitive search experience that continues through the entire trip and not just the initial booking. So in a sense, it looks like Airbnb is building an all-encompassing AI assistant that could actually be pretty powerful. But one company that is struggling to define the scope of its AI assistant is Pinterest. And it was reported this week that Pinterest has issued a code red to revive growth and defend against AI-driven competition, which is triggered after a weak Q4 ad revenue and rising pressure from Meta, Google, and AI chatbots. Earlier this year in their company's filings, Pinterest confirmed that it was doubling down on the number of new AI development features following layoffs affecting around 800 members of staff. But according to reports, its product teams are grappling with an internal struggle about what that should actually look like. Their CEO is said to be keen on the idea that the company should build a voice-powered AI assistant to differentiate itself against others in the market who largely rely on text. The introduction of voice-based search features were apparently more valuable to advertisers in early tests, with the share of commercial searches increasing 25%. But product and design leaders have apparently pushed back against a deeper focus on voice as a primary UX, arguing that voice controls don't fit a primarily mobile product that could struggle with background noise. So search is definitely an area where some of the world's top tech companies are integrating AI to transform it into a more intelligent assistant. And if you want to read more about search and voice UX, then head over to the Department of Product Substack, where you can read some deep dive reports where I go through multiple different examples of how some of the world's top companies are transforming their search UX in 2026. Elsewhere this week, Cursor has launched its own version of plugins, which is a way to extend its AI coding agents with connections to external tools and services. Some of the plugins that might be of interest to product teams include Linear for pulling in issues, projects, and documents directly into your agent's context, Amplitude for querying behavioral data, and Stripe for building and testing payment integrations end-to-end. Stripe's product manager shared one example of a Cursor plugin, which lets product teams use a prompt like use the Stripe plugin to integrate a $20 a month subscription service, saying that this process is now even easier. Amplitude's product manager said that by using it, Cursor can pull in rich behavioral context, analyze growth dashboards, synthesize customer feedback, and then turn those insights into concrete recommendations. Now let's move on to some data and trends for the week. And the so-called SaaS apocalypse continues this week, with Atlassian announcing that it has imposed a hiring freeze after its stock was hit badly. And despite a general consensus emerging that it's a bad idea, there are fresh examples of companies building their own internal tools, which could prove more problematic for companies like Atlassian. So, for example, Goldman Sachs says that it has been working with Anthropic for 6 months to build internal tools and AI agents. These AI agents are in at least 2 specific areas so far, with other areas like compliance and accounting potentially set for automation next. Finance companies are increasingly turning to tools like Claude Code, and one example cited in the information this week tells the story of a brokerage firm who ditched the SaaS products that they previously used to build their own in-house versions instead. This, according to the company's CEO, led to an annual cost saving of $150,000. And all of this is proving to be a headache for the people selling in SaaS products. According to a new piece on the Wall Street Journal, the lead times for selling in a SaaS product has increased significantly over the past year as companies start to reevaluate their needs and figure out whether they can build their own internal versions of a tool before committing to signing a long-term contract with a vendor. This behavioral change is all driven by the adoption of AI internally, and a new piece of research published this week found that around 69% of firms across the US, UK, Germany, and Australia report currently using at least one AI technology, with the US highest at 78% and Australia lowest at 59%. So this is a new study by the National Bureau of Economic Research. The report also estimates a 5% boost in the value of firms whose workforces are more exposed to AI in the 2 weeks after ChatGPT was released. So if you're interested in learning more about how AI is impacting productivity in the workplace, then I'll pop the link to that new piece of research in the description. And speaking of ChatGPT, this week it recorded its highest ever daily active users figure on February the 9th with 256 million. Sam Altman also said that India now has over 100 million weekly active users of ChatGPT, making it one of OpenAI's largest markets globally. But one of the biggest victims of the success of ChatGPT is the freelance market. So according to this new analysis from payments company Ramp, the freelance market is being hit badly. This is a new research paper, and they say that more than half of businesses that use freelancers in 2022 stopped using them entirely by 2025. They also found that AI isn't just a substitute, it's actually dramatically cheaper. So for every $1 spent on freelancers, this turned into about 3 cents in AI spend, which is a 25x cost reduction. And so AI is not a one-to-one replacement in spending terms. Companies are either keeping or reallocating those savings. So that's a new piece of analysis from Ramp. And Ramp is also known for its monthly AI data, which is also worth a read. In their latest analysis, they say that Anthropic is having a breakthrough month. Overall, according to this new analysis, business AI adoption on Ramp rose to 46.8% of businesses in January, which is a new high. And within that, Anthropic usage jumped from 16.7% to 19.5% of businesses in a single month, which is one of its largest gains ever. They say that a year ago it was only 4%, and now it's roughly 1 in 5. OpenAI is still the largest provider, but it slipped slightly, and OpenAI adoption fell from 36.8% to 35.9%, giving back some previous gains. So Anthropic is growing quickly, but is not yet overtaking OpenAI on overall adoption in Ramp's customer base, at least. So according to this analysis, Anthropic's rise is not from people dropping OpenAI. Churn rates for OpenAI and Anthropic are both around 4% of businesses per month, which suggests that there isn't a big wave of switching from OpenAI to Anthropic, because if there were, then Anthropic's churn would be materially higher. Most Anthropic customers also pay for OpenAI, and about 79% of Anthropic's customers are also OpenAI customers. So the hypothesis here is that OpenAI's users are adding Anthropic as a second provider rather than replacing OpenAI or being totally new to AI. So what's striking about all of this, the Claude Code to Figma integration, Goldman Sachs building internal agents with Anthropic, the 10x jump in business adoption on Ramp's data, is that Anthropic is making huge strides in the corporate world. While OpenAI continues to dominate the consumer conversation, Anthropic is quietly becoming the go-to choice for many enterprises, meaning that the two companies are increasingly direct competitors, not just in the API market, but in the agentic coding space, where Claude Code and Codex are now going head-to-head. And when you take all that into account, it's no wonder that they refuse to hold each other's hands on stage at this week's AI Summit in India. What do you think about all of this? Let me know in the comments below. And on that note, I'll end it there for this week, and I'll be back next week with another briefing.